Look at that. One curve tells a whole story about time, risk, and investor expectations. Government bonds trade on this curve every day.
But in property, we usually display a single yield with little reference to how long the income is secured.
Which makes no sense. The value of income depends not just on when it's received, but how secure it is. Lease-backed income today is certain, but income in 10 years might just be an assumption.
That's the risk behind the income. But in property, we've glossed over it for too long. Valuers reach for comparable evidence, but when the leases don't match, they adjust the yield without saying what they're adjusting for.
But with no real explanation or even awareness of what they're adjusting for.
Right, but with explicit DCF, we can do better. We can map out a yield curve for property, just like in bonds. Not just for pricing a single asset, but to interpolate across different lease lengths.
So instead of just searching for similar leases, we can adjust intelligently across the curve.
Yes, if we know the risk premium associated with lease length, we can interpolate yields, or even build the curve from scratch based on assumptions.
But that only works if we understand what drives the curve.
Absolutely. And it's not just one thing, it's a combination. First, income assumptions. How secure the future cash flows really are. Second, risk. Growth volatility, reletting periods, tenant covenant. Third, investor demand, which can be counterintuitive.
Some investors will pay more for long income. They want security and duration.
Others prefer short leases, especially if they're repositioning the asset. That's the classic value-add strategy. Buy a building with short leases or even vacant space, reposition it, lease it up, and then sell with a longer income stream.
You're effectively moving along the yield curve, starting at the risky high-yield end and shifting toward the low-yield, long-income end, capturing the spread as value uplift.
Exactly. The value isn't just in the rental income. It's in the reduction of risk and the compression of yield as the asset moves from uncertain to secure.
So that curve becomes a map of opportunity, not just a pricing tool. It helps explain where returns come from and what risks investors are absorbing to get them.
And we can make those influences explicit by showing how risk shifts with time, how present value responds to discounting, and how demand affects pricing.
That's just like in bonds. There's the observed market yield curve, built from prices, and the theoretical one, built from models.
Right. Bond investors have used these tools for decades. For example, many use a strategy called roll down. They buy long-duration bonds and sell them as they approach maturity, harvesting capital gains as yields fall.
That's because bond prices often rise as maturity shortens. They pull to par.
Exactly. But here's where real estate diverges. With a core property, as the lease shortens, value often falls, unless you've got rental growth or yield compression.
Because the risk goes up, lease expiry, letting periods, reletting costs. So in bonds, time often works in your favor. In real estate, it can work against you.
Which is why core investors often sell before the lease expires. They're not just clipping coupons, they're avoiding the value erosion that comes with lease end risk.
So it's not just about income. It's about duration, reletting risk, and how those risks evolve over time.
And that's what a real estate yield curve captures. How pricing shifts with lease length, income security, and investor appetite.
So if we expect investors to insert an exit yield into their IRR model, they should reference this risk curve, not just guess based on intuition.